Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel Tech with Yashwant. So in this video, let us understand the Databricks architecture in detail. So what are all the components that are present and how exactly we can understand this architecture? We will see that in this video. So when we talk about Databricks architecture, right? So there are two components which we need to understand. One is the control plane, like you see on the left hand side. The other one is the compute plane, right? So I will talk about what is control plane and compute plane in a while, but make sure that you understand this right. So there are two planes, one is control plane, the other one is the compute plane, or compute plane is also known as data plane. So for you to know, just remember compute plane is also known as data plane. So just focusing on the control plane now, as you can see here, it includes the backend services, it includes the web UI, the UX, whatever the configs that you make on the UI that you see, all those things are present in your control plane itself. And the other aspect is compute plane or the data plane. Here is where your data is actually processed, right? So this is where exactly the data that you have in your cloud account will be processed. Now let's dive deep into this compute plane, because in compute plane there are different options. Let's see that now. All right, so if you see here, this compute plane has got two options. So one is serverless compute, the second one is classic compute. If you're using Databricks since a long back, you might have used classic compute, and this serverless compute was recently released in some time, right? So in classic compute you might have used all-purpose cluster, job clusters, you might have used SQL warehouses, the regular ones which you will be using, those are classic compute, and these are traditional computes, the virtual machines which will be created inside your cloud account. So as you know, Databricks can be run on any three cloud providers like AWS, Azure and GCP. So the VMs will be actually created in your cloud account. So you will have to take care of the number of nodes while creating the cluster, like what is maximum node that you want, what is the minimum number of nodes that you want. You will have to configure those while creating a classic compute, and you will also have to take care of the DBX runtime, the version of it and all those things, and you will have to wait until the cluster is up. So the cluster might take 6 to 8 minutes for this to be up. So I don't know if the minutes might have reduced right now, but usually it was taking 6 to 8 minutes as well. But you will have to wait until that is created, and only you can run your job. And on the job cluster as well, the job used to wait until the cluster is up, and only then you could process it. Similarly, your VMs will be created in your cloud account. Like I mentioned, the VMs that we actually use, the nodes that we create, will be actually created in your own cloud account. So that's coming under your classic compute. Whereas on the serverless side, serverless compute, so it is completely serverless cluster, meaning you don't have to worry about the cluster management itself. And the example would be your serverless SQL warehouse that you might have already used. And point to note is that it's totally managed by Databricks, and you don't have to worry about it at all. And one thing that you need to note is that the VMs will be created in the Databricks cloud account itself. So it is not present in your cloud account, rather it will be created in Databricks account, and you will be just using it. So coming to the cost perspective, serverless might be having some higher cost, but you should always check the documentation. But the classic one, like I mentioned, you can choose whatever the runtime you want and all those things. Serverless, it is given as a package to you. You'd have less flexibility when it comes to configuration of the cluster itself. But if you want to get started quickly, if you want to develop the product quickly, serverless is the go-to option. So you don't have to manage everything, and rather everything is managed by Databricks when it comes to serverless compute, and you can get started easily. So that's the main intention behind serverless compute. Now let's go and discuss about the architecture itself, the entire thing. So if you see here, you as a user, whenever you access Databricks via a browser, you'll be reaching the control plane where you will have your web UI, UX, and all the serverless compute also resides inside your control plane itself. And your configuration, the orchestration is entirely residing in your control plane. Whereas on your data plane, you have your storage. As you know, Databricks is an Apache Spark platform. So here the storage itself will sit in your cloud account, and you don't have to worry about it, worry about the security and all those things, because it's already in your account and nobody else is accessing it. And all the VMs that will be created in order to create a cluster will be in your data plane, or rather in your cloud account. And all the other services like Unity Catalog Connector, all those things will be created in your your own data plane. And if you are creating a managed table, for that you will require external location. So external location also will be in your data plane itself. So the data itself will reside in your cloud account, like I mentioned, and the classic compute will go ahead and create some virtual machines which is required to create a cluster, and those virtual machines are in your cloud account itself. So this is on a high level exactly how the architecture of Databricks looks like. So just to summarize, you have control plane and the compute plane. Control plane includes your backend services, and in the compute plane or the data plane is where your processing of the data is done. And the compute plane itself is divided into two aspects. One is serverless compute, other one is the classic compute. Serverless, basically you have your serverless cluster, serverless warehouse, and it's totally managed by Databricks. I cannot stress more on this. And on the classic compute side, example would be all-purpose job cluster and SQL warehouse. So it's a traditional warehouse or compute, and you need to take care of the number of nodes, you need to take care of the versions and the runtime, wait until the cluster is up, and the VMs will be created in your own cloud account. So this is the architecture, how it exactly looks. You as a user, if you're accessing Databricks, you will reach the control plane via the browser. There you will have the web UI UX, and even the serverless compute which you are going to use is also residing on the control plane. All the configuration and the orchestration resides in the control plane. Whereas on the data plane, the storage or your data resides in your data plane. The virtual machines that will be created by the cluster which will reside in your own account, and other resources like Unity Catalog Connector, all those things will be in your data plane or in your cloud account. And the classic compute will eventually create the virtual machines, and those virtual machines will be in your data plane itself. So this is on a high level the architecture of Databricks. In the next video, I'm going to talk about what is a medallion architecture in simple terms. So if you're liking the content that I'm creating, please consider subscribing and share it with your friends. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.